After my mother died, I had to return to my father, who was already living with his new bride and her son. They made my life hell, and then they wanted me to give up on the only person who loved me. I left, and I thought I had closed that chapter forever. But 12 years later, the past itself knocked on my door. I'm Evan, 32 years old, male. 12 years ago, I swore I'd never live under my father's roof again. Yet here I am, still haunted by those walls. Every sound, every look, every cold dinner at that house. When my parents divorced, I was 17. My mom, Anne, was the kind of person who made a place feel like home with just a candle and a cup of tea. My dad, Mark, was the opposite: strict, practical, and emotionally unavailable. When the divorce happened, I stayed with Mom. It wasn't even a question. She listened. She noticed things, like how I'd leave my shoes crooked when I was nervous, like how I'd hum when I was thinking too hard. She was soft where my dad was steel. Then she died. Just a year later, a car accident on I-40, the kind that makes the news for 5 minutes and ruins your life forever. After the funeral, I remember sitting in the back seat of my dad's car while he drove us home. Not a word the entire trip. He didn't even look at me, just white knuckles on the steering wheel, jaw locked. When we pulled into his driveway, Beth was waiting, his fiancée, the woman who had been helping him through a difficult time. Beth, 49 now, was all smiles that day. Back then, she had that kind of charm that hides barbed wire underneath. "Evan," she said, all syrupy sweet, "we're so happy to have you here." She hugged me like it was a performance. Behind her stood her son, Josh, then 18, arms crossed, smirking like he already hated me. Beth liked control. Everything in that house was her way. The dinner schedule, the thermostat setting, even how long I could use the shower. She'd correct me on how I folded towels. She'd knock on my door at 10 p.m. sharp if the light was still on. She told my dad it was for discipline. He agreed, of course. Mark always agreed with her. Josh, her golden boy, could do no wrong. He'd stay out all night, blow through his stepdad's money, and somehow I'd be the one getting lectured for not setting a good example. Once he stole my laptop to borrow it for a project and filled it with his crap, music downloads, games, and some truly disgusting photos of girls from school. Beth caught me deleting them and accused me of being disrespectful toward women.
Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. Thank you very much. Enjoy watching.
Josh watched from the hallway and laughed. I tried to stay invisible. Ate quick meals, did my chores, kept my head down. My father barely spoke to me, except to ask about grades or remind me to mow the lawn. Every time Beth praised Josh, "He's such a hard worker, so responsible," my father's face would light up in a way it never did for me. When I left for college, I remember packing my bags and swearing under my breath, "I'm never coming back here, never." But tuition was brutal, and the only way to afford it was living at home for the first 2 years. So I went back, and that's when everything started to unravel. When I met Laura, and when Josh's obsession began. I met Laura during my sophomore year of college, right when life was supposed to start feeling like mine. She was in my biology lab, brown hair always tied up, sleeves rolled past her elbows, laughing at something only she understood. She wasn't flashy, not the kind of girl who tried to be noticed, she just was. And somehow, that was enough to draw everyone in, including me. I didn't think I had a shot at first. I was living at my dad's house, juggling classes and a part-time job at a hardware store, eating in silence every night while Beth complained about the noise of my existence. But Laura, she saw past all that. She asked questions like she actually wanted to know the answers. She noticed when my voice cracked while talking about my mom. She didn't flinch when I said I lived with my dad and his fiancée. She just said, "Then you come here when you need to breathe." Within months, her apartment became my escape. Small, messy, alive. I'd help her cook. She'd help me study. And for a while, I forgot that Beth's house even existed. Then Josh found out about her. At first, he was just curious. He'd make these friendly comments when I came home late. "So, that the girl you're always texting? What's she like? Hot?" I brushed it off. He was 2 years older, still living at home, barely taking classes. He'd failed out once already, but acted like a frat boy on sabbatical. The night everything shifted, Laura came by to drop off a project I'd forgotten at her place. She didn't want to come inside, said she didn't like how Beth looked at her the one time they'd met. I told her it'd be quick, just 5 minutes. But of course, Josh was home. He opened the door before I even got there. Well, he said, leaning against the frame like some sleazy movie character. "You must be Laura. I've heard so much about you." He didn't move to let her in, just stood there staring, that smile crawling across his face. Laura shifted, uncomfortable, and said politely, "Nice to meet you." Josh's eyes dragged up and down like he was cataloging her. "Yeah," he said slowly. "You too." By the time I reached the door, I could feel my blood boiling. "Josh," I snapped, "move." He smirked, finally stepping aside. "Relax, dude. Just saying hi. You're so touchy." Laura handed me the folder, and I muttered thanks, mortified. When she left, I told Josh to stay the hell away from her. He laughed. "And if you're that insecure, maybe she's not the problem." That was the first time I wanted to hit him. I didn't, but I slammed my door hard enough to make the picture frames rattle. Over the next few weeks, it got worse. He started asking her questions directly, through my social media. I'd post a photo of us at a cafe, and he'd comment things like, "You can do better, Laura," or "Evan's a lucky guy, huh?" When I confronted him, he said, "It's just jokes. Chill out." Beth overheard one of our arguments and took his side, of course. "Josh is just being friendly," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're so defensive lately. Maybe college is stressing you out." My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. It was like screaming in a void. No one cared. Laura started avoiding the house entirely. She told me she didn't feel safe there, said Josh had started messaging her privately. Things like, "I'd treat you better than him, and you don't know what you're missing." I told her I'd handle it. I tried. I told Beth. She said I was misinterpreting innocent flirtation. I told my dad. He sighed and said, "Don't make this bigger than it is." That night, I packed my things and moved back into my dorm for the rest of the semester. But the damage was done. Beth wasn't done meddling, not even close. Because the next time I saw my father, he had an ultimatum, and it came straight from her lips. I didn't go home for a month after that night. I lived out of my dorm, borrowed money for groceries, and tried to pretend the whole mess didn't exist. Laura kept telling me I'd done the right thing, that no relationship, especially not with family, should feel like walking through a minefield. But one Sunday afternoon, my dad called, first time in weeks. "Evan," he said, his voice careful, like he was talking to a client instead of his son. "Beth's been worried. You made your point, but we need to talk. Come home tonight." I didn't want to. I should have trusted my gut, but part of me still wanted to believe my father could be a real parent, even just for one conversation, so I went. The moment I walked through the door, I knew it wasn't a talk, it was an ambush. Beth was sitting on the couch, perfectly composed in one of her cream cardigans, her hands folded like a therapist waiting to diagnose me. Josh was slouched in the corner chair, pretending to scroll his phone, but his smirk gave him away. My dad stood by the fireplace, silent, tense. "Evan," Beth began, "we're concerned about you, about this girl." "Laura," I corrected automatically. "Yes," she said tightly, like the name itself irritated her. "Laura. She's become a source of disruption in this family." I laughed. It couldn't help it. "Disruption? Because your son won't stop harassing her?" Beth's eyes flashed. "You're twisting things. Josh is young, emotional. He admires you, and you created unnecessary hostility." "Hostility?" I repeated. "He's been stalking my girlfriend, Beth." "Enough," my father said sharply. His voice had that commanding tone that used to make me freeze when I was a kid. "Don't talk to her like that." I turned to him. "Then talk to him. Tell your fiancé's son to leave Laura alone." Josh snorted from the corner. "You think she didn't like the attention?" That did it. I crossed the room before I even knew what I was doing. I didn't hit him. I just grabbed his shirt and shoved him back against the wall, hard enough to knock down one of Beth's framed family quotes. The sound of glass shattering cut through the air. "Don't you ever—" "Evan!" Beth screamed. She rushed between us like some righteous martyr, pushing me back. "Get out. You're unstable. I will not have violence in my home." My home. The words hit like a slap. I looked at my dad. "Are you really going to let her talk to me like that? After everything? After what Josh has done?" He didn't even meet my eyes. Just rubbed his forehead and said, "Beth's right. You've let this girl drive a wedge between us. You need to think about what kind of man you're becoming." That's when Beth dropped the bomb. "For the good of this family, and for Josh's emotional well-being, we think it's best you end things with her." I laughed, disbelieving. "You're giving me an ultimatum?" Her voice went cold. "If you choose to keep seeing her, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. Mark won't continue supporting behavior that divides this household." I looked at my father again, praying he'd say something, anything, to prove he wasn't completely spineless. But he just nodded. "Beth and I are on the same page," he said. "You're an adult now, Evan. You make your choices, but actions have consequences." There was this ringing in my ears, rage and heartbreak, tangled together so tightly I couldn't tell them apart. I didn't yell, I didn't throw anything. I just said quietly, "Then I guess I've made my choice." I went upstairs, packed every piece of my life into 2 duffel bags, and walked out. Beth stood at the bottom of the staircase like she was watching an exorcism. Josh smirked, leaning against the banister. My father just stood there, saying nothing, as his only son left the house for the last time. That night, I drove to Laura's place. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't even ask what happened. She just said, "You're home now." And she was right. For the first time in years, I finally was. Those first few months after leaving were rough. I had nothing but 2 duffel bags, a beat-up Panda, and the constant ache of wondering if I'd done the right thing. I crashed on Laura's couch until we could find a place together. She'd come home from work and find me hunched over job applications, or just staring out the window, like I'd forgotten how to be a person. She never said it outright, but I think she knew I was grieving something deeper than just a toxic household. I was mourning a version of my father that never existed. I tried to keep contact civil at first. A few texts, a voicemail on his birthday, mostly silence. Then one day, Beth picked up his phone when I called. "Evan," she said, her voice syrupy and condescending. "Mark's very disappointed. You could have handled things better." Tell him I'm not the one who should be disappointed, I said, and hung up. That was it. After that, I cut them both off. Laura and I built something real from the wreckage. We got a small apartment near campus, both working part-time while I finished school. I'd wake up early for classes, she'd bring home takeout on nights we couldn't afford groceries, and somehow we made it work. For the first time, I felt like I was steering my own life, not waiting for someone's permission to breathe. Years passed like that. Quiet, steady, hours. I graduated, got a job at a construction firm, moved up fast because I worked like I had something to prove. Laura became a counselor at a local nonprofit. We bought a small house. Nothing fancy, but it had sunlight and space for a future. My father didn't come to our wedding, didn't even send a card. Beth probably convinced him it would be inappropriate. Josh wasn't invited, obviously. It's strange how you can convince yourself you're done with your past until something cracks it open again. It was 12 years later when it happened. I was in the middle of fixing the fence in our backyard when a car pulled up. Some old silver sedan, dented and tired looking. The engine cut off and a man got out. At first I didn't recognize him. He looked older, thinner, like the years had scraped him hollow. Then he smiled, tentative and small. And it hit me. Josh. He walked toward me, hands shoved deep in his pockets like he was afraid I'd send him away before he even spoke. Hey man, he said quietly. Long time. I didn't answer at first, my body tensed, instinctively on guard. What are you doing here, Josh? He exhaled, eyes darting toward the ground. I know this is weird. Look, I needed to talk to you. I didn't know who else to call. Every muscle in me screamed to tell him to leave. But then I noticed his shoes, worn through at the soles, and the way his voice shook when he said, I don't have anywhere else to go. So I let him in. We sat on the porch, the late afternoon sun catching in the peeling paint of the railing. He told me everything. After I left, Beth turned cold, distant, said he reminded her too much of me. My father started working longer hours, avoiding the house entirely. Josh struggled with school, started drinking, fell in with people who didn't care about him. Eventually, he dropped out. Guess I was never really her son, he said bitterly. Just her favorite as long as you were there to make me look better. For the first time since we were kids, I didn't see that smug smirk on his face. I saw someone broken, someone still trying to figure out when everything went wrong. He told me he was trying to get clean, wanted to start over, asked if I could help him find work. Part of me wanted to say no, to tell him he'd earned every bad turn that came his way. But another part, the part that remembered the lonely kid I used to be, couldn't do it, so I said I'd help, with boundaries. That night, Laura came home and found me sitting at the table, staring at my hands. You did the right thing, she said softly when I told her. But don't let him drag you back into that world. I promised I wouldn't. But as I watched Josh leave that night, shoulders slumped and hope flickering behind his eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story between us wasn't over. Not yet. Helping Josh started small, too small to feel dangerous. I called an old contact at the hardware store I used to work for and got him a temporary spot stocking shelves. Nothing glamorous, but it was something steady. I told him up front, I'm not saving you, man. You have to do this yourself. He nodded like he meant it. The first few weeks, he actually seemed, different. He showed up early, stayed late, even called me once just to say thanks. He rented a room downtown, started going to night classes at the community college. For the first time since we were kids, I saw him trying. Laura was cautious at first. Just remember what he put you through, she said one night while folding laundry. I know, I said. He's not staying here. I'm just helping him stand up. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. You've got a bigger heart than he deserves, Evan. Maybe I did, but part of me felt like if I could help Josh fix his life, I'd be fixing a piece of my own past too. A few months passed and things looked stable. Too stable, maybe. We'd get lunch sometimes. Nothing deep, just sandwiches and small talk. He'd tell me about classes, about working extra hours. He said he'd stopped drinking. I wanted to believe him. Then he started visiting our house more often, always unannounced. Once or twice, it was fine. Then it became a habit. I'd come home from work and find him sitting at our kitchen table, chatting with Laura over coffee like we were a trio again. She never complained, but I could see it, the polite tension in her shoulders, the way she'd glance at me for rescue. Josh had this way of drifting in like he belonged, like history had been wiped clean. One evening, I came home and found him in the garage, leaning against my toolbox, holding one of my old baseball gloves. You kept this? He said, smiling faintly. Man, I remember when Beth threw my stuff out after you left. Guess she really did pick favorites. He looked at me then, really looked. You were right about her. About all of it. For a second, I almost believed we could start over. But then he said something that froze the air between us. I still think she liked Laura, though, he said, voice lighter now. She used to talk about how pretty she was. Guess she was jealous, huh? I forced a laugh, but something in the way he said it felt off, like that old obsession was still flickering underneath. That night, Laura said quietly, He makes me uneasy, Evan. I know he's trying, but sometimes I see the same look he used to give me. I nodded because I'd seen it too. That too intense stare, the one that wasn't about attraction. It was about control, envy, something darker that he didn't even understand himself. Still, I tried to be patient. He'd been through hell. And for a while, it seemed like maybe this was just old ghosts haunting him. Then he started talking about Beth and my father again. They're still together, he said one night over dinner. Happier without me, I guess. Figures? I told him not to dwell on it, but he wouldn't let it go. You don't get it, man. She cut me off after you left, treated me like garbage. I was the golden child until you ruined it. That word, ruined, hung between us. I set my fork down. You think I ruined your life? He shook his head too fast. No, I didn't mean it like that. I lost everything when you left. You were supposed to stay. We were supposed to be brothers. There it was. The old resentment under the apology. That night, Laura said what I'd been avoiding. He doesn't just want help, Evan. He wants you to feel guilty forever. I told her she was wrong. But the truth, I wasn't sure anymore. Because the next week, when Josh finally got his new job at Walmart and sent me a picture of his uniform with the caption, "Look, bro, I'm making it," I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt this low, heavy dread in my chest, like something was still unfinished between us. And I was right. Because a few weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was from Beth. She said, "He's manipulating you, Evan. Don't let him drag you down the same way he did us." And for the first time in years, I couldn't tell who the real villain was anymore. Update. Hey everyone. It's been a few weeks since I first wrote about Josh showing up again, and honestly, I didn't expect so many people to care. I read through every comment. Some of you told me I was too forgiving. Some said I was setting myself up for another disaster. One person wrote, "You can't fix a fire by hugging it," and that line hasn't left my head since. So here's what's happened since then. When Beth texted me out of nowhere after 12 years, it threw me completely off balance. For context, this woman hadn't said a single word to me since the night I walked out of that house. And suddenly she's warning me about Josh? It didn't make sense. At first I ignored her. But then she sent another message. "You don't understand? He twists things. That boy's been a storm since you left." I showed it to Laura. She frowned and said, "She's stirring the pot, Evan. That's what she does. Don't feed it." So I didn't reply. But Beth wasn't lying about one thing. Something was off about Josh lately. It started small. He'd call me every day, sometimes twice, just to check in. He'd talk for hours about how much he regretted the past, how he never got the love I did, which is ironic because he was the one Beth worshipped. Then he'd spiral into guilt trips, how I'd left him behind, how I was the only one who ever believed in him. At first I tried to listen. I thought maybe he just needed to talk it out. But the conversation started feeling less like confessions, and more like rehearsed performances. Like he wanted me to feel bad again. Then came the incident that really cracked things open. One night I got home, late from work. Laura was asleep upstairs. When I walked into the living room, the light was on, and Josh was sitting on the couch, inside my house. He had a spare key from when he helped me move furniture a month back. I'd forgotten to ask for it back. He jumped up when he saw me. "Hey man, sorry, I needed to talk. You weren't answering your phone." "It's 11 at night," I said. "What are you doing here?" He looked pale, jittery. "I just needed someone to talk to. I was thinking about, Beth, everything. I told him we could talk tomorrow." He didn't move, just stared at me with that same unnerving mix of anger and sadness. "I keep thinking about how easy it was for you," he said quietly. "You got out. You got her. You got the life that should have been mine." The silence in the room was thick. I took a slow breath. "Josh, you're making progress. You got a job, a roof over your head. That's something." He laughed, short, bitter. "You don't get it. You always had someone. Mom, Laura, even Dad. I had nobody." That word again, nobody. Like my existence was supposed to fill that hole for him. I told him to leave, calmly but firmly. He hesitated, eyes glassy, and said, "You'll regret pushing me away again." Then he left, slamming the door so hard one of Laura's frame photos fell off the wall. She woke up terrified. I spent an hour calming her down. When I told her what he'd said, she just looked at me and whispered, "He's not healed, Evan. He's obsessed with being you, with having what you have." And I think she's right. The next morning, I drove to his place to talk things through. But it was empty. The landlord said he'd moved out 2 days earlier. No forwarding address. For the next week, nothing. No calls, no texts. I started sleeping better, thinking maybe he'd just decided to move on. Then, last night, Laura found a letter wedged under our front door. No envelope, just folded paper, written in Josh's messy scrawl. It said, "You think you can leave again, but you can't. Not this time. We're brothers, whether you like it or not. You owe me. You'll see." That's where I'm at right now, Reddit. Half of you are probably screaming that I should have cut him off earlier. The other half will say I should call the cops. But the truth is, I don't even know what Josh wants anymore. Revenge? Redemption? Or maybe just to remind me that I'll never really outrun that house. For the next few days after that letter, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching our house. It started small, lights flickering in the driveway, our trash cans tipped over at night, a shadow I swore I saw moving by the fence. Laura said I was imagining things. She wanted to believe it was raccoons or kids, but I knew better. Then the texts started again. New number, no name. Still think you're better than me? Bet Laura doesn't know what you were like before. You took everything. I just want what's mine. Every message hit like a cold slap. I tried blocking the number. New ones would appear. Laura begged me to go to the police. I hesitated. What would I even say? My estranged stepbrother, who I helped get a job, is leaving creepy notes and text messages, but technically hasn't done anything yet. They'd log it, maybe, and tell me to call back if he showed up. That didn't feel like protection. It felt like waiting for something worse. That something came one Friday night. I was working late in the garage, trying to focus on a project, just fixing an old shelf, but my hands were shaking too much to drive the screws straight. Laura had gone upstairs to read. Around 10, I heard a faint crunch outside, gravel under shoes. I stepped to the window, but the motion light had been smashed, just dark. Then a tap, not on the door, on the garage window. I turned slowly, every hair on my arms rising. Josh's face was right there, on the other side of the glass, pale under the dim streetlight. He smiled, eyes glassy, almost pleading. I opened the side door halfway, just enough to keep the distance. Josh, what the hell are you doing here? He held up his hands. I just wanted to talk. You weren't answering me. Because you've been threatening me. He stepped closer. No, you're twisting it again. You always do that. I just need you to understand. His voice cracked. You left me with them, Evan. You got out and never looked back. I didn't owe them anything, I said quietly. And I don't owe you either. That's when his expression changed. Something inside him snapping into something feral. You owe me everything, he shouted, slamming his fist against the doorframe so hard I felt it vibrate. Laura came running downstairs at the sound, calling my name. Josh froze when he heard her voice. His eyes darted toward the house, and his breathing went wild. You still have her. You always get to keep her. Josh, stop. He turned, kicked over a bucket of tools, and stumbled back toward the street. I didn't follow him. I just stood there, watching him vanish into the dark, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. We called the police that night. They took a report, said they'd patrol the neighborhood. It didn't help. I barely slept, half expecting to hear that tapping again. 2 nights later, I found the garage door spray-painted, in red. 3 words, you owe me. Laura wanted to pack up and go to her sister's, but something in me, something deep and tired, snapped. No, I said. I'm done running from this family. I didn't tell her what I planned, just that I'd handle it. The next morning, I called my father, first time in 12 years. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was older, rougher. Evan? I need to talk to you, I said. It's about Josh. Silence. Then, he showed up here too. My stomach dropped. What? He came by last week, my father said, his voice low. Wanted money. Said you promised to help him. Beth made me call the cops when he wouldn't leave. That's when I realized Josh wasn't just spiraling. He was burning every bridge he'd ever had. Dad, I said, if he comes back, you call me first. He hesitated. Evan, be careful. He blames all of us. But mostly you. I hung up and sat in my truck for a long time, staring at nothing. For the first time since I was a teenager, I felt like that scared kid again, caught between rage and heartbreak, realizing the only way out was through. That night, I waited in the garage, with the lights off and the door cracked open, a quiet storm building in my chest. If Josh wanted to finish what Beth started all those years ago, he was about to find out I wasn't the same scared boy they'd driven out of that house. I didn't sleep that night. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Laura's restless breathing upstairs. I sat in the dark garage, phone on the workbench, waiting for a noise I half hoped wouldn't come. It came just after 1 a.m., the creak of the back gate. I turned off my phone's flashlight and waited. A shadow crossed the window, then another tap. I opened the door before he could knock again. Josh stood there, soaked in sweat, eyes wild. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hands were trembling. I just wanted to talk, he said, voice breaking. You called Dad. Why'd you do that? Now he thinks I'm crazy. Because you're scaring people, Josh, I said quietly. You broke into my house. You vandalized my garage. You need help. He shook his head violently. You don't get to say that. You don't get to decide what I need. He took a step closer. You had everything because of me. Because I took the heat when Beth tore into you. Because I played the bad son so you could look like the victim. And then you left. That twisted logic cut straight through me. You think I asked for that? You think I wanted any of it? He didn't answer. He was crying now, big, uneven gasps that made his shoulders shake. She stopped talking to me after you left. She said I reminded her of the worst part of herself. She loved you, Evan. Even when she said she didn't. And I hate you for that. For a long second, I didn't move. I just stood there, looking at this person who'd once been my shadow, and now was barely human under all that pain. Josh, I said quietly, you need to go to the police station. Tell them you're not okay. They'll help you. He wiped his face, laughed bitterly. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Me locked up so you can play the hero again. When he turned toward the garage wall, I thought he was leaving, until I saw what was in his hand, a screwdriver, one of mine. He must have grabbed it from the workbench. I froze. Put it down. He stared at it like he didn't even remember holding it. You always fix everything, Evan. Let's see if you can fix this. Then Laura's voice broke through the doorway behind me. Josh, stop. He spun toward the sound, just a reflex, but that was enough. I stepped in, grabbed his wrist, and shoved him back against the wall. The screwdriver clattered to the floor. He slid down after it, crying again, whispering, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. Laura was shaking. I told her to call the police. They came fast this time. Josh didn't fight them. He just kept staring at me while they cuffed him, tears streaking the grime on his face. Before they put him in the car, he said, You'll always owe me. I didn't answer. When the taillights disappeared down the street, I felt something heavy lift from my chest. Not peace exactly, just the absence of panic. The next morning, I called my father again, told him what happened. There was a long silence, then he said, He's been sick for a long time. Maybe now he'll finally get help. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it. Beth sent me one last message a few days later. No apology, just, I hope you're happy. You broke him. I didn't reply, because she was wrong. I hadn't broken Josh. She had. My father had. That house had. All I'd done was stop pretending it wasn't still burning. Final update. It's been 6 months since that night. Josh was admitted to a psychiatric treatment program instead of jail. He's medicated, in therapy, and, according to my father, starting to stabilize. I haven't visited. I don't plan to, not yet. Laura and I moved to a new place outside the city. It's smaller, quieter, with a yard big enough for the dog we adopted last month. We hung one photo in the living room, the two of us, smiling, sunlight spilling through the trees. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from Josh. Short. No threats, no guilt trips. Just an apology. The last line read, You were right to leave. I should have too. I didn't cry when I read it. I just sat there, thinking about how a lifetime of being pitted against each other had almost destroyed us both. I didn't get revenge the way Reddit usually means it. No grand exposure, no dramatic takedown. But maybe the sweetest revenge is the quiet kind, the kind where you build a life they said you didn't deserve. Beth and my father still live in that same house, trapped in their own cycle of control and compliance. But me? I walk into my own home, breathe freely, and close the door behind me. And for the first time since my mother died, it finally feels like I'm home again.